Hello, fellow musicians. Welcome back to Music Student 101. This is your host, Jeremy Burns, and 102, that is. Matt will be along shortly, but you know I like to do these little intro bits to keep you posted with what's going on. And if you are noticing that our bumper music has been a little funkier than what you're used to, that's because the piece you're listening to is actually called Chi-Town Theme by our bass instructor, Cleveland Eaton. This was recorded back in 1975 on his album, Plenty Good Eatin'. And we're also going to hear another track of his, Kina, from the same album later on during the show. And we'll also talk a little bit more about Cleve during this episode. This episode will be another listener Q&A, previously released on YouTube and now made available for our podcast listeners. It's been about a month since our last release, and there's a few reasons why things have slowed down a little bit over here. Some you've probably come to expect, but we all talked about my OCD on the production value. While sheltering in place, no one's been down here really in my studio, and certainly not Matt as he's trying to do the same. So we can't really have those genuine face-to-face conversations with our good microphones and, most important, Matt on the piano. And for that reason, I feel like it's been difficult to maintain a certain tone that we're all used to on this show. And it's not just our audio, it's Mike, our announcer, it's Brian on the drums and Jerry on that guitar, who often collaborate on our bumper music. But I think I'm ready to start exploring a safe way to get those cats back into the studio, get them back down here and get some more music going. I had taken for granted the weekly dose of collaborating and recording and just didn't realize how much I missed that until I couldn't have it anymore. Now, we've all heard me complain about the telecommunications software problems I've been experiencing, from the compressed audio on Matt's end to switching camera shots and all that video stuff that we've been attempting, all the videos we've been attempting. But if I'm being honest, there's more to it. I've been having a difficult time motivating myself to continue producing the show as things are. Within these feelings are hopes that we can all get back to normal and we can continue to deliver the quality content that you deserve. But in the meantime, we are still receiving support from our Patreon patrons, and we thank you. And we are still receiving engagement from our listeners. So the overall consensus with me and Matt is that we need to continue to give you guys something. My goal for the next few months, probably for the remainder of the year, is to try and release a proper show at least once a month, and then spend the extra time catching up on Patreon question episodes, and we'll probably continue to pepper in the listener Q&A episodes as we go. People seem to enjoy the casual nature of that, so we'll keep that going. And again, we will also be following up with our Patreon patrons to make sure that those who deserve a mug get a mug. The process of going through each member and checking their status and getting their addresses is a bit time-consuming, so by all means, hit me back and just say, "Hey, Burnsy, how about that mug?" That'll definitely move you up in my queue, because when someone calls me out, I respond way quicker. That's long story short. Organization skills. Get you some, Jeremy. Anyways, bear with us as we navigate these strange waters. Know how much we love what we're doing and how much we appreciate our listeners. And having said that, let's go ahead and talk about music.
Hey, Jeremy.
Hey, Matt. What's going on, bud?
Not much. How's it going over there?
I'm working a little bit more. I'm surviving. I'm happy to be
That's good.
Down in this little studio here. It's so quiet and lonely down here, and until I get you in here and our good listeners. So
yes, indeed. We're working on that.
We are working on that.
Yeah. So good to know that you're working again.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I've been pursuing things that I normally never have time to pursue. So that's been my week and my month and last couple of months at this point. So,
what kind of? One would hope that's what we all do, right? That's
right.
I've done a little bit of that, but what kind of things are you talking about?
Well, I'm looking into a couple of research projects that might turn into something significant. I'm composing more than normal, and just little things like that. Research, doing some non-musical exploratory stuff that interests me into mythology and literature, and the cross section between literature and psychology, and just things like that are fascinating to me. That I'm not an expert in, and that's why I like to pursue it. So yeah.
That interests me. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, pretty fascinating stuff.
Yeah. Wow. How's Fran doing?
She's good. We're still hanging in there. We're still waiting for all of this to be over.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like it was going to get worse before it got better, because it is certainly worse. But
so maybe it won't get worse before it gets. It won't get worser before it gets
before
better.
it gets better. Let's hope not.
Oh man. Okay. Well, things are going good with my family. Chloe's here for the weekend. She's been staying with her dad's family to babysit during the week, but we get her for the weekends now during the summertime. So she's just up in her room making cool things, sewing and creating and doing what she does.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and Heather's doing good as well. So
good.
I couldn't ask for much more.
That's great. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
So what's new in the world of Music Student 101 these days?
Well, in our world, unfortunately, we have some bad news that I would just like to go ahead and get over with right now.
I know what this is too.
Yeah. About a week ago, our bass instructor, Cleve Eaton, passed away.
Who we have mentioned many times on the podcast.
We have mentioned many times on the podcast.
I don't know if we've mentioned that we're both bass players. Have we ever said that or not?
Well, now that I'm not sure about.
Yeah.
But maybe when they heard us.
It just so happens that we're both bass players. I don't know if that's ever come up, but.
And I think we owe the bass players we are to this man greatly.
Indeed we do. To Cleve Eaton, who sadly passed away this week at the age of 80, I think it was.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. Cleve was a guy who, and I've been thinking about this a lot since I heard the news. Cleve was a guy who spoke the truth. Yeah. Unfiltered.
Yeah.
And completely BS free. He spoke the truth, and nothing but the truth, and he did it in his particular way. He was a real character.
Yeah.
Yeah. And everybody who ever knew him knew that. But so many of the lessons he taught me and taught us went beyond just being a good bass player.
Mm-hmm.
Went towards what is really important in music and what is really important in life as well.
Right. Yeah.
So it was a shame to hear of his passing.
Well, the other night I had myself a glass of Jameson on ice, and I actually listened to some of this album. I didn't even realize, because he never said anything about this. Why would he have to, right?
A man with nothing to prove.
Yeah, totally.
At the point in his life when we knew him.
But I was reading some of his bios, and I saw this album called Plenty Good Eatin'.
Yeah.
And I was listening to this while I was kind of putting this together from one of the bios I found, and maybe I'll try and play this background song. I'm sure it'll be okay with Myra, his wife.
Sure.
But if you don't hear it, it's just because I didn't get the proper permission. But either way, I will still read you this and tell you a little bit more about this man that Matt and I have loved for so many years. So Cleveland Josephus Eaton II.
Yep.
He was born on August 31st, 1939, right? He's an American composer, arranger, producer, publisher, and as it applies to me and Matt, a bassist and mentor, right? A sensei, if you will. Because he was tough, and he could always tell when I didn't do my homework, right?
Oh, sure.
That's when I was no longer Jeremy, I was fool!
Fool.
Get it right, fool!
He was the only person I ever knew to use the word fool as almost as a term of endearment.
That's what I was going to say next, because it was confusing, because sometimes fool is a compliment, Yeah. Oh yeah, go on, fool, you got it, fool.
Yeah.
Or go back and work on this, fool.
Yeah, he just called everybody fool, just...
Right on. Well, Cleve's musical journey began at age 5, and at age 15 he had mastered the piano, trumpet, and saxophone, right?
Yeah.
Around that time, one of his instructors allowed him to bring a bass home. He hit it pretty hard and was eventually noted as one of the best and most versatile jazz bassists in the business. His work has appeared on over 100 albums, and he has composed almost triple that amount. Matt, I did not know that this man has composed over 300 pieces of music.
Wow, I did not know that either.
He has dazzled audiences with the likes of Gene Ammons, Gene Ammons, Bucky Green, Ramsey Lewis, and of course the great Count Basie Orchestra.
For which he was probably most noted. I think the big thing when we knew him was that he was the former bassist for Count Basie for the Count Basie Orchestra.
Right. Now, not long ago, he was inducted into the Alabama Jazz Hall of Fame and the Alabama Music Hall of Fame. On July 5th, 2020, he passed away in the hospital. He had been hospitalized for 4 months at that point. He was survived by his children, Kwani, Lothier, Andre, Kenya, Kelly, Tanya, and Cole, and his amazing wife, Myra, who Matt and I both know and love. So, I had no idea he had so many kids. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, me either. We knew so little about him, actually, when you think about it, because all he ever talked about was playing bass.
That's right. That's all we had to talk about.
And yet, he talked about so much more than playing bass.
Exactly.
You know?
Well, I just wanted to share that with you guys because I wanted to give him a proper, tribute.
Yeah.
If we could, and just wanted to share with the world what a great guy that was and how much he meant to me
and to all of us.
Yeah.
And definitely go look up Cleveland Eaton and his large music repertoire that's out there, and check this guy out. He was an amazing musician.
Yeah. And according to the article I read, just a super guy. His daughter wrote an article. His daughter Kwani wrote a nice article about him, or a nice little write-up on Facebook. So
good.
Now, let us move on to some good news, shall we?
Let's do that.
Okay. First point of order, Stamps.com. What is this? This, my friends, this is a scale that came to me from Stamps.com because all this while we have our Patreon listeners who have been donating to us, and certain levels, certain tiers of donation receive certain things that I would normally mail out.
Right.
And I just have not had any interest in going to the post office the way people are acting around here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. For those of you who may not know or realize, the U.S. in general is not handling the coronavirus especially well right now. And the state that Jeremy and I are in, the part of the U.S. that Jeremy and I are in, is not the worst, but certainly not the best in a country that in general is kind of struggling right now. So yeah, things like going to the post office have not been a good idea.
Nah.
Something that you'd rather not do if you don't have to. So, and now Jeremy doesn't have to.
We're gonna make the post office come to us. Well, they do that every day, anyways.
Yeah,
that's nothing. But now, just all that to say, we'll finally start being able to send out these mugs that people have been so patient with us for during this epidemic time. So.
Right. Yeah. Well, we were behind with that before the epidemic, and because we figured we'd probably have like 6 patrons.
Yeah.
When we first started, it's like we have 5 or 6 patrons. We'll think we're doing great, and it is bigger than that at this point. So, which is definitely a good problem to have. It just means we got behind on emailing out the coffee mugs, and
hats off to the Patreon patience.
Right.
Patience to the Patreon people.
Absolutely.
All right, man. So that's good news in my mind. That means to me that means we're getting this thing going again, right? Right.
Yeah. We're working on it.
So here's another fun, cool thing. I have been talking to our friend Pt.3 from India, from Chennai, India, right?
Right, who we have talked about before, yes.
Yes, we have. Now, Pt.3 has picked up musician with a Y. Musician.
Yeah, okay.
Musician. And we've been talking about it a little bit, and I've started picking it back up again, and I'll tell you what I've done different this time. Because this is all about reading music for me. Back when I was, let me see here. back when I was first learning how to read music, I would basically, like when I was taking from Cleve and trying to learn those jazz pieces, I just make sure I got the notes, and I'll just play based on the notes I saw on a very base level.
Right.
But there's a few things that I was not paying attention to that I'm paying attention to now that I want to share with you folks. When it comes to sight reading, specifically, okay? So I got a little list here. Number 1. And just so you know, Musician is an app where it's like one of those things where you're seeing the notes coming across the screen and you got to play them to keep up, right? While you're reading them.
Yeah.
And they do all their like ear training lessons and all that stuff. And so scales and proper fingering and all that jazz. So I am paying, number 1, I'm paying more attention to the intervals instead of the lines and spaces combinations between the notes, right?
That's a very good idea. And in fact, that is how professional sight readers, and I don't consider myself one, but I do know some. And that is what professional sight readers talk about doing more often than trying to hit the actual notes, is they're looking at the intervals between the notes more.
Right.
That's something that my piano instructor back in the day tried valiantly, but ultimately in vain, to get me to understand when I was younger than I am now, probably 18, is to try to read intervals, not look at notes when you're sight reading.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, the idea is to look at this thing and play it. Yeah.
So, for example, relative to the staff that the notes are on. So, if I see a third, I'm pretty good with thirds and fifths. But I might see a sixth and might think that's a fifth. You know what I mean? Like little things like that.
Yeah. Okay.
So anyway, that was the first little tip. Number 2, I'm trying to honor the note durations. You know what I'm saying? So if I see a half note with a dot, I'm not just going to play that note and be thrilled that I got that note. I'm going to actually try and release the note when I'm supposed to release it. As soon as I see that rest,
right. Yeah.
I would release the note, you know.
You know what Cleve would say, pat your foot.
Yeah, always be tapping. And counting. Counting becomes more subconscious to some degree if the more and more you do it.
Sure, yeah.
So yeah, in the past where I was like, hallelujah, I got the note, now I'm actually trying to honor the note duration. You know? It's been a big weakness of mine. And I found this out when I was trying to properly transcribe Dewey and Dora by our friend Keith Andrews.
Yep. I remember that.
Mm-hmm. So I ran into some problems and I said, okay, what do I need to go back and work on here? This is one of them. Now, number 3, this app has a color-coded based fingering system of suggestions that, you know, pink, blue, whatever colors for suggested fingerings basically is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I'm trying my best to honor those. And these are all based on the same patterns we've learned in music theory or piano proficiency classes.
Sure.
You know, you doing the crossover on major scale and all that stuff with the thumbs.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that would not work for me. I'm not a color person. I'm not a different colors make. I had professors, you know, I mean, all the way up into doctoral school to try to make complex ideas simple by using color codes, and it always just, I don't know what it is about it. It doesn't translate from my eyes to my brain, but I'm just not a visual learner that way. You know, when I to this day when I read theory papers and they get the big graph, you know, I skip right over it. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm more of a conceptual thing, you know. I'd rather read the verbal description 3 times and then see the graph in my head than actually look at the graph. I'm weird that way. But there are pedagogy theories about this kind of stuff too. I'm just, you know, I'm on the, you know, if you take as these pedagogical theories do, you know, take, you know, visual learning on one axis and conceptual learning on one axis. I'm pretty far over here, so visualizations don't make a lot of sense to me. Concepts do.
Okay.
Whereas other people are more towards this side. Concepts they struggle with, but visualizations help. So
I might be the other guy.
Yeah, I mean, everybody learns differently. It's one of the things you have to realize when you're an educator.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Well, moving on, I got another one. Number 4.
Mm-hmm.
So you're supposed to perform these exercises in real time, right? So it's coming at you on a timeline in true speed of however the song would be performed. So you got to land those notes when they come. And that has taught me to kind of keep the coming notes in my periphery, like in my peripheral. So I'm actually trying to stay 2 or 3 measures ahead of my performance.
Right. Yeah. Oh, you do the same thing when you're reading words.
Right. Yeah. I guess
you don't realize it when you're reading words, because that's something you have become extraordinarily proficient at as an adult. Hopefully.
Yeah, right.
You know. But you know, when you're reading words, you're not just you know, you are saying 2 or 3 words ahead, and you know your brain is actually thinking of them as a sentence more than it is as individual words, right? Your brain is kind of skipping that part where it has to put the words together. You just read the sentence.
Yeah, because I think it'd be a lot of pressure to get the notes as they pass this one little moment in time, as opposed to having that buffer ahead of you while you're reading the music. You know.
Right. Yeah. And you know, you start to, after a while, you know, you start to recognize shapes, and you're playing the shape more than you're playing, you know, more than you're going note, you know, because I mean, if you think about some of the things, go look at a Rachmaninoff piano concerto, you know, I mean, to read that as note would be humanly impossible, right? I mean, you know,
right.
So the only way anybody can do that at all is they have a you know, larger perspective, you know.
Yeah, like storage space, like RAM kind of thing.
Yeah. You know, they're looking not just where they are, but where they are, where they've been, and where they're going, and that is kind of the place in the music in their brain, right? Again, not that I'm a professional sight reader, you know, but this is my understanding from people who are, you know.
Well, we were given the tools to become such if we wanted to. We just didn't really go that path, right?
No, I practice my sight reading every day.
Like, right? No.
I actually kind of don't, but yeah.
But now you think by the time you're composing and actually notating yourself, that's got to be a great help. You know, it's like sight reading in reverse, right? You're getting used to.
Yeah, it's kind of like sight reading in reverse. I have found it to be an extraordinarily different skill, but yeah, it does help your music reading in general, certainly, because you know you have to get proficient enough to get your idea onto the page before you lose it, right? So yeah, it is. I guess it is a little bit like sight reading in reverse. You know, so many things are going on in my head when I'm composing that it's honestly it gets pretty crowded in there, because there's not just the idea, but there's the idea, the getting it onto the page. There's the implicit theoretical ideas behind the idea. There's where do I want the idea to go. There's, you know, what instruments does this idea require, and you know, blah 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 blah. But
yeah,
you know.
Well, anyways, that's another thing to keep in mind. Now, finally, I have one more. So. I've always been kind of a completionist, okay? And a lot of these apps have a video game kind of setup, right?
Right, get all the Chivos and...
Yeah, if you get it 100%, you'll get 5 stars. Well, I'm not going to sit there with 4.5 stars, okay?
Right.
So I'm trying to go back and get everything perfectly. Like when I play Final Fantasy, before I fight the big boss character, I'm going to go off and make sure I got the coolest weapons and all that jazz.
Right.
But this is the same kind of thing, although if you really try and do that with this, you might find yourself rage quitting a bit more than you normally would, as I have. So I'm trying to give myself a little more grace, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to letting myself get things wrong, come back to them later, then get the 100%.
Right, yeah.
So anyways, that's just one other thing that I try and do, and try and be a little more easy on myself, try and give myself a little more grace to mess up and then come back and fix it.
It's a lifelong process.
It is. You can't expect to get it in one sitting.
No.
Okay. So there's my little self-actualization that I've been having about my sight reading, and I'm sharing it with you guys, and I hope it helps.
Well, thank you for that. That's it inspires me to try sight reading some more myself. It's something that because my musical journey sort of went in other ways. I never really developed that skill to where I was exceptionally proficient. So probably something we should all work on.
Sure, yeah. Okay, so let's talk about a new listener, shall we?
Yay!
On the last episode, we kind of ran out of time, but we did tease this listener here. So that sounds to me like a great place to start.
Yes, it does.
We have a listener named Nancy Chase.
Yes, we do.
From Queen Creek, Arizona.
Yes, she is.
And she found us searching on the Google Podcasts.
Excellent. And Nancy says, I have been a musician my entire life. I even went to college to be a concert pianist before I realized I wasn't really a performer and switched back to being a teacher. This was more than 20 years ago. I wish so much I had your podcast back in the day. You guys have helped me understand things in my own profession better than I ever understood them. Well, thanks, Nancy. We really appreciate that.
Right on.
I literally take an hour every day right now where I lock my door to my room to keep my kids from bugging me and listen to you guys while taking tons of notes. With this said, please do your Foreman analysis part 3 soon. Oh, man. Yeah, we are getting there. You are just getting into the good stuff with that subject, and you guys have a way of explaining it that is brilliant. I literally learn a new thing or perspective every time I listen. I need that episode. Thanks for doing the podcast, Nancy. Well, Nancy, first of all, thank you so much for the kind words. We really do appreciate it. It always does my heart good to hear that, somebody is getting good out of us sitting here and talking about music.
Yeah, absolutely.
And where the part 3 of Foreman analysis is concerned, we are on top of that. Well, I don't know if on top of that is the right phrase. We are thinking about that. That is on our radar in a pretty big way at this point, and we're going to be trying to pick that up pretty soon.
Right, because the theory books we're basing this curriculum on are pretty much now on the final closing chapters, and one of those is a continuing discussion on form and analysis, which involves sonata form and rondo and
the minuet and trio, the large forms, the things. So in part 2, if I'm remembering correctly, we went up to rounded binary versus sectional binary and all of that good stuff. And now we are getting into the larger forms, sonata form, rondo form, and how this can work. Slight spoiler alert, this is possibly one reason this is taking a little while is I made Jeremy write a sonata form. Peace.
Yes, and I have been hounding Matt for the past couple of weeks, asking questions. I guess I could just read the chapter, but it's so much funner to hear Matt describe it. And Matt had some really good examples. So Matt, let's play a game.
Okay.
Let's pretend like I'm calling you up for the first time.
Okay.
And saying, Matt, I just need kind of like the Cliff's Notes version of what.
You talk about Jeremy torture, by the way. I mean, this is Jeremy torture beyond. I say compose a sonata form, for and of course every question he had me elicited more questions than it did answers. Because sonata form is like that. But yeah.
But it's really kind of based. I mean, a lot of popular music is based on, right, the concepts behind sonata form, is it not?
Yeah. Okay. So here's a thing, and I can absolutely hear somebody out there having this thought. They say, "Well, hey, Matt and Jeremy, I am not a classical music composer, I'm a singer-songwriter or something, and I can't think of a single song in terms of popular music that's ever in sonata form. Why do I have to know this stuff? Why do I care what Mozart's first movement of his 40th symphony, what if that was sonata form or not?" My answer is, well, if you learn sonata form as just a juxtaposed section of things, as in here is this thing, and then next comes this thing, and then next comes this thing, then you are right. That is not particularly helpful to you as a songwriter, and frankly, it's not even particularly helpful to me as a composer or a theorist or anything else. But if you learn it in the right way, what sonata form teaches you is that all forms of music, have a psychology behind them, right? And a sort of, I don't want to use the word meaning, but all forms have a sort of psychological journey that they're taking you on, and they're using harmony to do that. And if you understand that notion, then you don't have to use sonata form. That's just one example. Verse, chorus will also have a psychology behind it, right? And you can learn how to manipulate those. So this is one of those things where if you learn it in the right way, it can help anybody that's a musician.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But anyway, back to your game. So you're calling me up.
Ding, 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 ding.
Hello.
Matt. Dr. Phillips. I'm frustrated as hell because I'm trying to write a sonata form, and I watched a few YouTube videos on it, and I read my theory books on it, but for some reason I'm still having a little bit of problem with it. What are the parts of the sonata form, first off? You want to just...
Yeah. Well, first of all, I wonder if I would give you different answers if you called me Matt or called me Dr. Phillips, which way, if that's what the listener said, two different answers, I don't know.
Yeah.
But okay, so the parts of the sonata form, in the large, you have three main parts. You have the exposition, and then the development, and the recapitulation. The exposition is what you are exposed to the principal themes, hearing them for the first time. The development, in which those themes are played with, fragmented, transposed, played in combination, and all other certain things developed in a certain way. And then the recapitulation, in which you hear those themes played a final time before the end of the form. Those are the big three-part forms, right? And this three-part section of sonata form grew out of something that we talked about back in Form and Analysis Part 2, which is rounded binary form. So it grew out of that whole A, B, A prime concept of the rounded binary, right? Where you something is stated A, and then there's a digression from that, right, which would be B. And then that thing returns in some kind of modified way, which is A prime, right? And that is as the rounded binary. And in the sonata form, same thing. You have something that is stated in the exposition. There is a digression in the development. And then the recapitulation is that restated, that A prime that is restated in a different way. In the case of sonata form, that different way is that it's all stated in the same key, whereas in the original exposition, there was in at least two different ones.
Aha! So that's the difference between the sonata and the rounded binary, other than all the crazy articulations and manipulations that occur within the development.
The big difference, as I see it, between sonata form and rounded binary is to put it simply, you can simply say size, but more than that, it is the level of concentration given to each of these parts. So the sonata form doesn't simply end on a half cadence or a modulator 5 within a set of a few phrases the way rounded binary would. The sonata form has an entire theme, right? That is in the key of the 5. So it did not just move to the 5 and then proceed with its B form is digression. It actually moved to the 5 and created a whole lot more music there. That movement to the 5 was not just a couple of measures, but was in fact a whole thing that we call a transition. Yeah. So I would say
this is all still during the exposition, right? This is all during the exposition, right?
Yeah, the A part of what would be a rounded binary. Yeah. You know, sonata form is ultimately a rounded binary form. It's just a bigger one.
Okay.
You know, and when I say size, I don't mean length necessarily. It's not that it's longer in time, that it's, you know, 10 minutes versus 3 minutes or anything. It's size as in the amount of musical material that comprises each of those A, B, A prime sections.
Although I will say a lot of these sonatas are pretty long. It's kind of hard to...
They get huge. And you were just looking at the classical ones. You were just looking at the Mozart and the Haydn. Wait till you get to Brahms.
Oh, man. Well, maybe I can work my way around that.
Yeah. Yeah, wait till you get to Tchaikovsky and you'll see that you'll talk about long.
I'm hoping I'm listening to those for enjoyment rather than an analysis. But
right.
But I mean, that's kind of like the Cliff Notes version. I mean, we're going to get into an entire episode on the sonata form at some point, right?
Right. Yeah. This is a teaser. This is a teaser of what we're talking about. Yeah.
But that makes sense to me.
Good.
So, Nancy, there's a little something for you.
Just a little bit of a teaser for Nancy, and yes, that is coming. Jeremy needs to finish his homework and finish his sonata form composition.
Right. Starting tomorrow.
Yeah, that's what you said yesterday.
I did. Oh, man. Well, do you want to move on to a new listener? Actually, a new Patreon.
Yes.
Patreon patron.
We have a new patron as well. This is our new patron, who is Stacy Parry. I hope I said that right. Perry or Parry. Mm-hmm. From Running Springs, California. And Stacy says, I left school in 2015, had started my BA in music ed, and then had plans to eventually go for the music therapy credentials after that. But started having babies, and our family biz has just kept us too busy for us to go back to school yet. Well, families are more important anyway. So there you go. Stacy has 2 preschool-aged children, a 4.5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. And she continues there learning the Preschool Prodigies program with the C major scale notes and different colored bells. There's an app we use and free videos on YouTube. Reading basic music, singing, and hand signing. The solfege is covered. Using songs like Baby Shark. Oh, great! Now that's in my head.
We all know Baby Shark.
I can only imagine how much Stacy has had to hear that and how it's about to drive her nuts. They can sing and play along with the videos, and clapping, tapping, continuing, and reading rhythm is all part of the Preschool Prodigies curriculum. My husband also plays piano and trumpet. And I just got my Ovation guitar fixed. Ooh, an Ovation. Nice. And have a ukulele too. Praying for more time for music. P.S. Many of the apps and podcasts you guys have recommended have been great too. Thanks. Thanks so much for describing your musical life to us, Stacy. That's really great. I always love to hear about kids getting involved in music and parents taking the time to teach children music. You know, this is the best time for them to learn the basics. It's right there, you know, in your preschool and toddler years when your brain is absorbing an extraordinary amount of information anyway. Yeah, it seems like children who learn it at this age of life learn it in a fundamental and ingrained way that is more challenging when you try to learn things when you're older, like I did, and like we did, you know.
Well, I didn't even realize this until just now, but when I put this together, both of our listeners that we've talked about so far, Nancy Chase and Stacy Parry, are both mothers of small children.
Yeah, hey, look at that.
And I wonder if they can get anything from our Children in Music episode that we did a while ago.
I don't know. I hope so. Maybe maybe they could share some advice with each other. You know, you never know.
There you go, man. You can find yourselves probably on the Facebook music group, Music Student 101 Facebook music group with an exclamation point.
Absolutely. And if you're not on that, I recommend going and getting on that, because this is a community, and Jeremy and I are a part of it, but we're definitely not, I would say, necessarily the driving force behind it. This is just a community of our listeners. Really.
Yes. And we like to watch what they say to each other and how they respond. And it's such a loving atmosphere and supportive atmosphere.
It's really great. It's really great. Yeah. And there's a lot of learning going on too. I think I mentioned last time, some of the analysis that happens does not require my input, which I love that. I could just watch them go on and analyze things of their own and do a great job. And they don't need me, which is a good feeling to have, even though it may not seem like it.
Yeah. No, it's a great feeling. It's a great feeling because they came up with stuff that I didn't come up with. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
So anyways, I just think that's great. And it's cool that these people are trying to involve their kids in their music. And I just...
the Music Student Facebook group, !
Yeah, check it out.
And while I'm thinking about it, because we are terrible at promotion and advertising, we should probably also plug the Patreon page.
Oh yes, Stacy Pari is a Patreon patron. Actually, I meant to say that earlier, so we want to thank her for that.
Yeah, thank you, Stacy.
And I just it's really made a big difference.
Yeah, patreon.com/musicstudent101, right?
Yep, correct.
Yeah. And we have 3 different levels.
Oh, yes. We have basically anyone sending $1 or $2 is considered unison, a unison Patreon patron. And they can just get access to everything on the page. On the Patreon page, there's like a few videos that we did and...
some videos of the band, the MS-101 band.
Yeah, man. Me and Brian and Jerry killing it, or trying to kill it.
Yeah.
And then, so the when you get $3, when you do $3 a month, you get a coffee mug, which we're talking about right now with stamps.com.
Yep.
And we'll be sending those out soon. And if you give $5 a month, we will give you a mini episode, and we're backlogged on those as well. But we're picking things back up, just so you guys know.
We're picking things back up. And with that mini episode, you get to ask us a question, and we spend a minimum of 15 minutes, is it?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
There's not one yet that's been only 15 minutes. But we will spend a minimum of 15 minutes discussing your particular music question.
Yeah, I feel like if we do one that's 15 minutes, that person will feel slighted.
We'll feel slighted. Well, up until now.
Oops. Yep. Well, thanks again, Stacy. And
thank you, Stacy.
Oh, one other cool thing about Stacy is she sent me a message, a Facebook on Messenger, a recording of her playing "It's What a Wonderful World."
Yes.
And then segueing into "Over the Rainbow." And she was playing the ukulele and singing, and it was just so sweet and gorgeous and wonderful. So
great.
Yeah. I want to give her a shout out. Maybe she'll let us listen to that at some point.
Let's hope so.
Cool, man. Well, let's move on, shall we? Because we were just talking about the Music Student 101 Facebook group.
Yes.
And this is where I saw this cool thing. Okay, so last episode, we presented a Locrian challenge.
Right.
You remember that? Because our friend...
I do remember that.
Jay, the guitar player, was like, Locrian mode seems to be more of a theoretical mode, so...
More of a theoretical mode, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And that's not entirely a crazy thing to say, right?
The Locrian mode does not get a lot of love.
Yeah.
At least not in standard musical theory.
Mm-hmm. But sure enough, on the page pops up our friend Mark Soriente.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Soriente has composed a Locrian piece, and it's just called, I think it's just called F-sharp Locrian.
I think so, yeah.
He shared it with us on SoundCloud, and not only is it in Locrian, it is an F-sharp Locrian.
Great.
F-sharp Locrian.
Wonderful.
And it's in 7/4. Who does that? Mark Soriento does that.
Mark does that. Is who does that.
And it's actually really cool, and it's actually a short enough piece where we could probably even share it twice if we need to. But
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and try and set this up, right? So first I got to do screen share, and then I got to click share. Now you see my screen.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Okay.
So
All right.
again, F sharp, Locrian.
F sharp, Locrian.
All right. Real quick, I do want to say he goes to a couple of different places, and he mentioned something about going to 2, and we'll talk about that in a second. But
Sure.
the main things I'm hearing is the F sharp, you know, and then at some point it goes to it goes to an A feeling, which I would call 3, right?
Yeah, in F sharp, Locrian, and that would be A, C, E. So that would be a minor chord. Am I right with that? About that? Yeah.
Absolutely. And then the other chord he mentions is the 2 chord, which would also be, well, actually...
It would be G natural, and that would be
Yep, G natural. So listen for those. I'm going to try and figure out when that comes up. But we'll go ahead and play it and get ready, because this baby is cool as hell. Stand by.
nice.
Aha.
You can really feel the tonic as diminished chord, which is the case in any Locrian mode, right? So you can really feel that lack of a perfect fifth, which keeps you very off center.
Yeah.
But definitely a valid sort of musical sound world that this mode can be, right? I mean, I can imagine all sorts of potential stuff.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
So
He got a lot of cool compliments, and a lot of good discussion came from that post, and he ultimately ended up saying, "Thanks, guys. Locrian is kind of underrated, right?" Right?
I think it's a little underrated, yeah.
He says, "I think it's super useful if you use it creatively. In this case, it sounds pretty cool to hang out on the 2 in the progression before going back to the root, because 2 is a major, like you say, but still reasonably resolves back to the root, which I made a suspension to solve the issue of the unresolvedness of the flat 5. So
this is both what's cool about Locrian and why it gets so little respect, right? It is because it sort of defies one of the basic tenets of tonal harmony, which is your tonic chord ought to be a consonant chord that needs not be resolved.
Yeah.
And yet, because it has a flat 5, it does. It does have a feeling of unresolvedness about it. So, one of the coolest things you can do in Locrian, as Mark did, and as I did in the at least one Locrian piece that I composed. You can refuse to resolve that and just sort of treat it like the tonic. It's the tonic, and just deal with it. And then when the place at which you choose to resolve it is a very easy and natural way to have people sort of get pulled along and feel like they're in a different world now. So to get that feeling of transitioning from this world to sort of darkness and fear and transition into a different world. You can just resolve that when you want to. If you never want to resolve it, you can do that. But
yeah. But when you finally resolved it, I guess it was just like on the F sharp, right?
Yeah.
So
he did a good job of not making the G major sound like the real tonic, which is a concern whenever you're writing in Phrygian or Locrian or really any mode is that if you don't do it right, then you won't be able to hit a G major without sounding like, okay, that was the real tonic and everything before that was just preamble up to that, right?
Yeah.
And that does not happen here. When you hit that G major, it doesn't sound like tonic to me.
Uh-uh.
Yeah. So he's done a real good job, through sheer banging it into our skulls. I think, that what we are in is F sharp Locrian.
Right, because I guess so. So what you're saying is, if you hear a F sharp diminished chord, you would expect it to resolve to the major chord that follows the leading tone, the F sharp, right? But it's kind of interesting that it seems like the composer would have to work pretty hard to make that not happen, to make this G chord, the 2 chord, be tonicized.
Yeah. It takes some doing. So trust me. So you want to unshare this?
No, actually, I think we should listen to it one more time, like we do on our listener episodes, on our listener compositions episodes. And one more time, we're going to give you a listen because the overall song, the overall piece is this F sharp.
Yeah.
At some point, he moves to this 3 chord, which we decided was A minor.
Yep.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, anyways, and then it goes to the 2, which is just the G major chord. So
right, yeah.
We'll try and point those out when that happens, if we can.
If we can, yeah.
And we'll also count along at first so you can hear that seven-ishness in it, okay? One more time. And actually, I apologize, looking it up, the name of this is called Sizzlation, okay?
Sizzlation. All right.
Sizzlation. It's just F sharp Locrian is in the notes. I guess he just gave us the key or the mode in the notes. But anyway, again, this is Sizzlation with Mark Soriente. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, this is that A minor, the number 3 chord. That's that 2. Back down to
F sharp.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Again.
A minor.
A minor. And then there's that 2 chord.
Yeah.
Back to 1. Na.
Yeah. Nice.
Huh.
Well, you have to stay in F sharp Locrian.
There we are.
Yeah, there you go.
I need to do more stuff in Locrian, don't I? So, there we go, man. I think it's really cool that someone stepped up to the Locrian challenge, and I want to thank Mark.
Indeed. Thank you, Mark,
for doing that, and it was fun to share that. I thought that was really cool.
It was great. Yeah.
Well,
good work.
It's probably a good time to call it a day, don't you think, Matt?
Probably so. Thank you all for listening to us and bearing with us in these challenging times.
Absolutely. Thank you for your patience.
Yes, we want to get back to the official podcast as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And here's hoping that's sooner than later.
Absolutely. So maybe we'll have a few more of these awkward little videos before we get back to the actual show. But I do know that Matt and I have both resolved to try and, even if we can't get down here in this basement and do it under perfect conditions we normally do, we might actually try and pull off a show pretty soon, an official show. In the meantime, I will be posting the audio of these on our actual podcast.
Excellent.
If you're seeing these anywhere other than YouTube, just know YouTube is where you can hear all of our shows and see these videos as well.
Wonderful. All right, great. So we will see you guys next time.
Looking forward to it.